Well, good morning. It is February 3rd, 2011, and it's another edition of Take 5. We're in Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus has been teaching and getting very intense and serious, and that continues today. We are in verse 31. It was also said, "Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." All right, now I know this is controversial, and I'm going to deal with this again in chapter 14 and chapter 19. Jesus is saying to this group of Jews that you've heard that it was basically okay if you wanted out of your marriage to just give your wife a certificate of divorce and then you could leave. And that's the way they looked at it. The prerequisite for a divorce, according to their law, which you could find in Deuteronomy chapter 24, was to find something unclean in their spouse. But they took that to mean pretty much anything. Which means if they just didn't like their spouse, they could give their spouse a certificate of divorce and marry somebody else. And it was the husbands doing this to the wives. The wives didn't have those kind of legal rights back then. Jesus is saying that that's not God's plan. That's not right. He says you're not allowed to divorce your wife unless there's been unfaithfulness. That's the only exception. And he's going to say it again in Matthew chapter 19. There are a couple of other passages where he teaches on this. Mark 10 I know is one, and I think Luke 6, but I might be wrong, where it doesn't even give the exception. The fact is, God expects when two people marry that it be for life. Now this is an area that I've seen our churches basically give in to the world. Remember we read earlier about being salt and light and influencing the world? Well, here's one where the world really has influenced us, and we allow divorces. We don't really try to stop them very much. And even in the church I go to, we have something called divorce care. We just kind of expect divorces to happen, and we'll have a program to care for people when it does happen. And you know, there's some good to the program like that, I guess, especially with kids that have been hurt, and it's not their fault. But we don't take a strong enough stand on this. We certainly don't take this stand that Jesus takes and only allow divorces where there's been unfaithfulness. Now, I'm divorced, and I admit that, but I will tell you there was no unfaithfulness, and I did not want the divorce. Now, I'm not trying to brag on myself and say I'm anything special. I'm not. But this is just the case where, well, I don't want to put down somebody else either, but I will just say that right now people don't have convictions on this. They don't care really what Jesus said. They're just going to do what they want to do. They want to be happy. Being happy is the key, and they forget what Jesus said about how to be happy in the first part of this sermon. Anyway, I would encourage all of you who are married, obey Jesus here. You're not going to be blessed by going against Jesus, and it's not going to work out. And I've seen enough times people disobey Jesus here and then get remarried, and the next marriage is a problem too. Because you know what? Whenever you do that, whenever you divorce your spouse and marry somebody else, you take yourself with you. And a lot of times you're a lot bigger part of the problem than you thought you were. All right, well, this is a very personal subject to me, and it probably came across that way, and I don't intend to do that very often. I want to teach the Word objectively if I can. We'll deal with this again in, like I said, Matthew 14 and Matthew 19. But we've got about 15 seconds left in today's broadcast, and I just want to encourage every single one of you who are married to stay true and make that marriage last. And if you're not married yet, really think long and hard about it before you do. Realize it's a commitment that is for life. See you tomorrow on another edition of Take 5.